Alright guys, so what's going on? My name is Dustin. You guys may know me as Pone Star, and we are here to talk a little bit about me. Yes, the show is back. I know it takes a lot of time for me to render these, a lot of time to upload. Just combined effort, it's probably about 5 hours in each one of these videos. So understand that. That's why these come out, here and there rather than day by day by day. But we will continue. We left off, I believe, talking about my grandmother and my mom, some of the issues I had with my mom, and my trust with my grandma, how much she was there for me, and how much I kind of leaned towards her. She was the woman that picked me up every day, bought me Pokemon cards, and it was kind of like the mediator between the issues between my mother and me. So she was kind of the one that I could always go to if anything was wrong, and she would protect me. And she shouldn't have many a times because I was deserving of what my mom wanted to dish to me, but I had faith in control with her, and that's what I loved about her. Now we were still in our middle school days. During this period, I think is when Mom got married. She married a guy named Greg. Greg was the closest guy, and you can ask me now. Greg was the closest guy that I could ever describe as being a father to me. I'm pretty sure I don't think I've talked about him yet, but it was a unique experience to me because he was addicted to drugs, and with drugs comes a lot of problems. He was in and out of prison for years. Mom even turned him in a couple times. It was not good for him. I think I've talked about this. He lost his mom and his brother. I think it was his brother. I'm not sure. While he was in prison, how hard it is to lose loved ones from there. And I saw what actual drug addiction can do to a person. And to witness this and try to comprehend it as a kid is hard to do because kids don't have addiction. That sensation that every time we go into the grocery store that we want a Hot Wheel, that doesn't fucking count. And the things that I remember most are not, I remember how nice a guy he was. If anyone was to ever ask me, about my father, I would have wanted it to be him. He was a really, really good guy. And it's sad to see what something like an addiction can do to a person that had so much going for them. And during this period, the things that I can remember is not so much about him, but rather the experiences we had when he was in and out of prison. I remember going to Michigan. I remember trying to steal stuff out of the vending machines because they were like seeing rooms, and there were ways to rig the machines. I mean, you could simply put in your 50 cents and then put a penny in. This is back in the day when the vending machines sucked ass. That you could put like 2 quarters in for cookies, and then toss a penny in there, and it sends all your coins back, including the penny, and you get the credit to get the coin. So I'd go in there and I'd get a shit ton of hamburgers and sweets and pay virtually nothing for all the food. I'd spend my time not even spending time with him. I'd keep going around throughout the 20 vending machines in the room, every 5 minutes, going in there seeing if anybody left any change in it. And I'd walk out of there with like $20, and we'd be there for a little while. And that's the experiences I remember having with him, that and being behind the glass wall with the phone, and it's not a fun experience for a kid. And he loved me so much. He did. He was a hell of a guy, and it was a painful experience for us. But anyways, we're gonna hop back into school. He was a good guy, but in between going to prison, seeing him, having the calls, we even went to some of his meetings, some of the AA meetings or whatever the hell you want to call them. Him having to check in and doing the piss checks and everything like that. It was an experience to witness. But that's that. I mean, I think I've already talked a little bit about that. I want to talk a little bit about my middle school experience. Now, it's about the area where I'm dealing with middle school. This is also where Greg's out of the way. Terry comes in, who was the guy that I told you from the last one. Was the guy from the last one that killed himself. I told you guys about the guy that made my life just a living hell. His name was Terry. He did end up killing himself. And I just wanted to let you guys know a little bit about that. And on that day, I celebrated. I know it was bad. It's hard for a person to get that hard, but he made my life hell. And I was so glad to know that he couldn't do that to someone else, if that made any sense. So that's where we were during this period. Now, during this period, I'm going to tell you a little bit more, and this is about during the area where Terry was around. So during my middle school days, it was a miserable home life. I had fun at school. That was my only chance to do anything, was at middle school. And I encountered my first issues with drugs, girls, racism, all of that during middle school. I went to a middle school which was pretty much dominantly black, which means there were like 5 white kids and 500 black kids. And um, as a kid, it's different. This is where I dealt with my first bit of racism, and it may seem weird because personally, racism doesn't bother me because it's fucking racism. It's words. No big deal, bro. You try harder. Come on. And as a kid, I didn't understand that as much. As I grew up, I grew out of it. No big deal. But they'd make fun of me for being white, call me Cracker and Casper and all this random stuff. And I'd have some of my friends, not me, not personally, but that's because I fought back. But most of the other couple white kids I knew would just get bullied and beat up. And I spent a lot of my time getting in fights. I spent a lot of my time protecting my friends that were getting bullied, and that's pretty much what recess was for like 3 or 4 years of my life, was playing a little bit of soccer here and there and getting into fights. That's kind of all it was. And middle school was rough for me because it was this transition that I was having the horrible home life followed up with trying to advance in school, when middle school was just so beyond boring to me. I was so far ahead, the learning curve and everything like this. I was so far ahead that nothing these teachers gave me would satisfy my urge for, becoming more intelligent or entertaining me. And on top of the ADHD that I had, it was hard for me to focus. I'd sit there all day long and chew on my shirt collar and chew the buttons off of my shirt and just devour pencils and pens. And that's all I did all day because I was done with this homework or these classwork in 10 minutes and the rest of the kid needs the other 40 minutes. I was just extremely fast when it came down to this stuff. So middle school during class was boring. I felt like it was just some camp to throw me in to piss me off. And I dealt with a lot of things. I encountered my first issues with drugs there too. The first temptation of weed and crack and shit like this was felt there. I was in art class, and this little pocket, this little baggie with what seemed and which I thought was a baby tooth fell out of this guy's pocket, and I'm like, dude, you dropped your tooth. He's like, what do you mean I dropped my tooth? He looked down, and apparently it was just a little rock in there. And he tried to sell it to me, and then he told me about his uncle gives it to him, and he sells it to the kids at school. I'm like, this is middle school. This is middle school, and his uncle's got him selling drugs and weed. He's like, I can get you weed. I didn't know what the fuck weed was. I'm like, dude, no, I've got allergies. I don't know what the fuck weed is. And I was just like at a trance, so then I didn't know what to do, and I did the worst thing that you could possibly do as a kid, and that was snitch. But I did it because I thought it was best for the kids at school. The uncle ended up getting arrested. I ended up getting beat up. So getting jumped is different. I don't actually, in reality, I don't think I ever lost a fight, like an actual fight. I got jumped a few times, like by a few people, but an actual fight, I don't think I ever lost one. But I'm not trying to brag or boast or anything. It's been so long, I'd probably get my ass kicked by a handful of people now. It's entirely different. But this was in school. And that was my first experience with drugs, and it was kind of an awakening moment to understand that, oh my God, you got kids just because their uncle tells them, what's he do? Does he give them like pixie sticks for selling, a couple of bags of weed? I mean, and his kid's what, 10 years old? It's kind of crazy, And this was also during the period where I started hanging out, started getting athletic, playing sports, and it was really, really rough because I was making the transition, trying to get back to healthy, because when I was in elementary school, the biggest problem in my life happened, which was the car accident. I had a car accident which rendered my back messed up. I was then able to participate in sports like I was able to. It kind of ruined my soccer/football career. And it really took a part of me away because I had such a great future in playing soccer. And it was taken just straight out from under me. And this was the area where I was getting back out on the field, where I was able to play a little bit more soccer. I was able to play basketball again, and I was getting back to my confidence level and my security. My back was getting stronger. I was able to do more things. And so recess was kind of like the highlight of my life. Like the 15, 30-minute recess was where I was seriously the most happy, because when Terry was home, I was grounded. I could rarely play video games. When I could do anything, it was video games. I didn't really hang out with friends when he was around. So that's kind of all I really had to do. And I would be what you would classify as a nerd. I was an athletic nerd, but I was not in with the cool kids. I got made fun of a lot for being white. I got bullied. I got picked on. And it was never a fun experience. I would be definitely what you would call a nerd. If somebody wanted somebody to cheat off of, I had kids that would threaten to beat me up if I didn't do their homework. I wasn't getting shoved in lockers and stuff like this, but to avoid drama, I would shut up phone. I would do that kind of thing. So during this, I also found out a couple of other things that I was extremely gifted at, one of which was gambling. Obviously, from the hours I spent of my childhood just watching my father play euchre, I learned to play euchre. I started playing this at school. I started throwing dice at school. I started making money at school. I don't think I started this in elementary. I think I started in middle school. And during this period, I started making money. And I started realizing, I could hustle kids. So I started making a lot of money. I'd walk out with 10, 15 bucks a week, and, I wouldn't buy my lunches either because I was not hungry, because that ADHD medicine, the Adderall I was on, took away my appetite. Because it does make me focus a little more, I also was not hungry. It took away everything. I would eat like one meal a day for like 10 years of my life, like no joke. I ate nothing. So I just kept my lunch money, and I started saving up money for video games and stuff like that. I started gambling, using my money for gambling, and I started to find another one of my passions, which was art. I used to draw Dragon Ball Z characters, Pokemon, and draw them on their in highlighters. I used to draw Super Saiyan on their binders and stuff like this, and I started getting a name for myself. Kids would come give me $5 to draw Goku on their folders, and I started making a little bit of money in a middle school. Man, I was a straight up businessman. It wasn't I went into crack business like that other kid, but I was making pretty decent earnings. Just being a kid. I don't know where the hell these kids got the money from. Probably they were selling on the low, but I was making a little bit of money, and that's what started building up my confidence and stuff like this. And I started getting more confident. I started being like, I can be responsible. I'm becoming an adult. All these kids go through this phase. And I also started hitting a couple bumps. Obviously with the home life, I started having more issues with my father. I started blaming him for everything. I started noticing and hating him for not accepting my sister because she was getting older. She was realizing what he wasn't. And I realized what kind of man it would be to deny your child, to want nothing to do with him. I started noticing as I got older that he just simply didn't want anything to do with me. And it put me into this craze where I was depressed. I was put on Zoloft, which is an antidepressant. What kid gets put on that kind of stuff? Now, I was emotional during this period. I ended up getting off because we went to the doctors and stuff, and my mom thought I was suicidal. And I don't think I was suicidal. I don't think I would ever take the easy way out. I don't think I could ever kill myself. But that's kind of the period I was with. I was dealing with depression. The only time I was happy was when I was playing soccer, or I was gambling, or I was doing something like this. I was getting into fights because of racism and issues like this. I was realizing how being different was wrong. And one of the worst encounters I ever dealt with was an issue with a teacher I had there. I actually got a teacher expelled. The problem was, as you guys know, with ADHD, you're hyper. It's hard to pay attention. When I'm done with my work, I would chew on my shirt, maybe make beats with the pencil on the desk. You know what I mean? I'd have fun. And one teacher hated me for this. He would send me, I don't even remember his name. It was Mr. Griffin, something. He was my math teacher. He would always send me to, he would always send me to the office or something like this, because, and I straight really believed that the reason he hated me was because I was white. I to this day, I believe he hated me because of racism. And one day, he would always send me to the thing. We'd always disagree, and I became a smartass towards him. Every time he'd get mad, because he'd say something disrespectful to me. He'd say something smartass to me, and then I would return with another smartass comment, because Pone Star does it that way. So one of the biggest issues is one day he said to me, he's like, you know what, Pone, Dustin, I'm sending you to the office. I'm like, great, I couldn't have guessed this. You only did it the whole last 4 fucking weeks. So I get up. I had a hoodie on that day. I put my hands in my pocket. I start, walking out of the class. And he goes, whoa, dude, whoa. And I'm like, and I turn around and look at him. I'm like, what the fuck did I just do? He's like, pull your hands out of your pocket. This isn't Columbine. And if you guys do recall, Columbine, it was a massacre. It was a school shooting. This was 10 years ago or something. This was when I was in middle school. And the teacher made a reference to a murder, to one of the biggest, massacres ever, and it was a school. And the fact that this teacher said something like that to me got him expelled. And you know how hard that is, as a kid, dealing with so many things at home and trying to adjust to racism and all this stuff. And I'm not trying to say it's a big deal, because I didn't care about it. As much as I act like racism was weird, it wasn't bad to me. It didn't hurt my feelings. it was just hard for me to try to understand, because as a kid, you don't understand what, I didn't know, when I was 19 years old, I didn't know what slavery was. I didn't know why black people hated me. I didn't know why these parents hated me. I didn't understand any of this. I didn't know why they were being mean to me just because I was white. And I didn't understand any of that shit. So I guess that's why it probably didn't affect me. So if I knew why they hated me, it would have probably affected me a lot more, but I didn't care. I just looked beyond it. Oh, cracker, yeah. So I started calling myself cracker. I started playing it off, and it's whatever. And that was kind of the experience I had during middle school, is I had that kind of issue, got in a lot of fights. I was a nerd, found my passions in gambling and art, getting back on the field with soccer and everything like this. Things were starting to look up. I was finding positive things to focus and aim my intentions and stuff towards. And then there were always just these little bumps. My mom's boyfriends, the teachers, racism, little things that were just peeking through that I had no clue about. And during this period, I also encountered... I came face to face with the rage that I have. You guys know that I have a little bit of anger problems. And during this period, I got into some of the biggest trouble I've ever been into, and it wasn't even my fault. I lived in the ghetto. Many of you guys, I've told you this before. We had our issues, and there was one other white family that was 2 houses down. There were actually 2 white families, and all 3 of us were side by side. And my neighbor, who was Mark, he was gay at the time, a really good friend of mine. I had a key to his house. I could go in anytime. We were playing in his driveway, and the neighbor, who's this big, fat, redneck motherfucker that does nothing but, just give us shit, he starts running off at his mouth, and he starts doing all the shit. He's like, get out of his yard. I'm like, I have permission to be in his yard. I got a key to his house. I showed him. I had a key. I walked into his house, and he got upset that a kid just showed up. And what he did is he came out with his giant Great Dane and threatened to sick him on me. And I said, let go of your dog. I swear to God I will fucking kill your dog. And it came out. Then he came back out with a gun. And this is one of the first few moments he threatened to shoot me. So at this point I called my father, had him come down, and I called the cops. Called the cops on the guy, nothing happened. My mom came home from work, because I got home at 3:30, we were there. She got home, roughly after 15, 30 minutes after my dad left, and after the cops had left. She went over there to confront them. Obviously, as a mother, very protective, find out that this guy threatened us with a dog and a gun. She was a little heated. I didn't know what to do. Obviously, if I was older enough and to understand she was going to get in trouble, I would have stopped her. She went over there, confronted them, banged on their door. They were arguing for a good couple minutes, and she said, I don't give a fuck what you do to your redneck inbred child, but you don't fucking say shit to mine. And he came out of his door and he assaulted my mom. The image replays throughout my mind. This is an image that I have never been able to erase from my mind. Lots of bad things have happened in my life that I forgot about or blocked out or gone through. This image plays through on repeat over and over and over again. And this was the first moment I ever dealt with rage, where your mind goes black and you lose track. So when people say, oh my God, I murdered somebody and I didn't know what I did, I understand what happens. Had I had a weapon in my hand, this guy would have been dead on spot. And I would have not have known what happened. I forgot. I had to have my mom tell me what I did during the period. So I see this guy come out and grab my mom and throw her down the sidewalk. Not the sidewalk, but the thing. She was leaving, which is assault, because she was leaving his premises. I know she was on his stuff, but because she was leaving meant that there was no harm, no foul. He came out, picked her up as she was leaving, and threw her down the driveway and went after her, but then his son and wife stopped. And during this period, all I could see is this guy throwing my mom, and I like zoomed in, into her face and saw the fear in her face and saw the pain, and I saw her hit the pavement, and I blacked out. My 2 friends were with me. They went and hid in the house. I think I went inside and I grabbed a one of those what do you call them? They hang up on the they hold the curtains, above the windows. I grabbed one of those rods and I was just gonna try to go over there and beat the shit. This guy was like 400 pounds. I would have got fucked up. He was huge. I was 10 years old. He would have hurt the fuck out of me, but I couldn't help it. I went after this guy with this. And right when I got to the edge of the street, or right when I got to his driveway, Mom was there laying on the ground, blood all over her knees. She turns and looks at me just in serious face, Dustin, no. And then reality clicked back in. And then I was back to who I was, and I was like, how did I get here? And I lost track of who I was for a moment, and it was the most painful thing I've ever seen. The person that I love most, my mother, was just assaulted right in front of me. She was picked up, she was thrown, she was harmed. by some bully. And it was one of the hardest things to ever deal with. And what turned out of this, and this is how fucked up the system is what happened. Mom called, she took pictures, she went in, she filed a report, nothing happened to the guy. What he did is he put up a counterclaim, and he said that my mom went into the house, punched his wife, and ran out, and he assaulted her or something like that in self-defense, even though she was leaving and stuff like this. And me being a child, what I said meant nothing. His son was of age, his wife, so that was 2 witnesses and him backing up their story, and 3 other children backing up my mom. Our word was nothing in the system. They're not going to listen to a bunch of kids. So it was basically my mom's word versus 3 fucked up people, and the ones that were actually guilty of the problem, and we lost. They took us to court. They said my mom assaulted her. They made up a lie that I dented, his car, that I assaulted his car, and we owed thousands of dollars in repairs. And he made this bullshit story, and because I was a kid, I could do nothing about it. I had community service for something that I did not do. And that shows you how fucked up the world is. He assaulted my mom, got thousands of dollars of our money, and I had to go to community service for something that he did. I have never, outside of Terry, I have never had more hatred for this guy than ever. You know how many times and how many ways I have thought to kill this guy? It's crazy. It's crazy, and I know it's weird to say, but people like that, and he lives off a disability. I mean, he it's what he does. And, I can't stand people like that. Leeches, scum, people that would just sacrifice other people, do what's wrong, and try to get away with it, not accept responsibility. And it was so fucked up. That was one of the moments of my life where I realized what humanity is, what I realized what people would do. And it's embarrassing, to be honest. And that's the end of this episode. That's pretty much a climax of what happened throughout my middle school days. After this is going to be a commentary about the impact of video games during this period and my first girlfriend. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace out. Get it.